Hello everyone, how are you doing? Welcome to the stream. Welcome to Turf Wars. Hope everyone's doing well. Hope my voice is not being down pitched or turned into a robot or silenced or all of the other bullshit tech issues I sometimes get. How's everyone doing? How's chat doing? I have a bit of a headache today, so we're just gonna see. We're gonna see how it goes. Should be right. As usual, I was like, oh, nothing much happened this week. And then I started scrolling through and I was like, oh my God, there's so many things I want to talk about. I was hoping to just slam through like 2 topics and call it, go to bed early, but it's not going to happen. So, oh well. Sound is fine. That is great. Thank you very much. You love my Dalek impression. Thank you very much. I hope you meant last week when it was bugging out and not that I sound like a Dalek now. No, I'm not hungover, actually. Um, I did, I hadn't been out drinking in ages, actually. I went out on Saturday. We're going to talk about that in a bit. Um, but I did, get drunk enough that the next day I was not feeling 100%. I don't really get hangovers. Like I don't get headaches or feel sick or anything like that. I just feel a bit more anxious and a lot more tired. And I entered a Pokemon cards tournament, came third, so maybe could have won it. Actually, I probably wouldn't have won it. I probably would possibly would have come second if I had not been sleep deprived and alcohol brain. But just got back from the Indy 500. Isn't that like a car racing thing? I have no idea what that is, but in my mind it's a car racing thing. Yeah, someone here pointing out that I need 700 subscribers to overtake Graham Linehan. I was actually just looking at those. So I was just looking on Social Blade. Wish I could get it up. Because they've got like a live tracker. Let's do it. Let's get them up. Just got to click some buttons. Yeah, so here's me, 28,000 just crossed. Thank you very much, everyone who's subscribed. And then here's Graham Linehan, 28,600. We're coming for you, mate. Of course, he's still got more than double the amount of views that I have, but he's also got considerably more videos. So I think maybe once we have 100 more videos, we'll be able to catch up on the view count. But yeah, it's going good. Recommend this channel to your friends if you want. Not just if you want, but if you hate Graham Linehan. Also, you might notice I've got a plaster on. I was doing some sewing. I was making some curtains. And I was using the fabric scissors, and I've got special fabric scissors, and they are incredibly sharp. And I managed to stab like downwards into my finger somehow, and it went very deep. I think I'm quite lucky it's not got infected or anything, but there was a lot of blood. I didn't get any blood on the curtains though, so that's good. Nothing was ruined or on the carpet. In fact, it went quite well, really. It just went like all over my arm, but it didn't go on my clothes or anything. But I don't really want to take the plaster off when I'm awake because there's quite a deep gash, and I can imagine catching it on something and causing some more blood. I don't think Graham Linehan's subscribers are falling. I don't think they are. According to the graphs, we've got the we can look on Social Blade. Yeah, it's just sticking at the same number of subscribers. It's not net negative. He's gained 100 in April. They haven't published May yet. So yeah, I mean, he got 91 views yesterday for the whole channel of 300 videos. So I don't know. Seems to have dropped off a bit. So, the reason I sometimes read out people from chat and say someone is because for me, when it's blue, I can't read it. Someone saying my estrogen level crashed yesterday. I did my e-shot, but I'm still not feeling back to normal. Well, hopefully you feel better. I can imagine having hormones injected. Probably more like the cis experience, having a monthly cycle if you have it monthly. Um, but also sounds like a nightmare. I don't know. Do whatever works for you. I've heard that it's like one of the best ways, but I have a gel. Talking of which, I might as well tell you a little medical thing I had before we start. So I had my annual blood tests. By the way, this is me being an idiot, so just learn from my mistake. I had my annual blood test the other day. Um, Go in, nurse just like takes two blood things, whatever, ask for all the things you want, and there's a huge list of stuff. It's not just estrogen, it's also like testosterone, obviously, but then they check like your liver function and your kidneys and all, a bunch of stuff that I'd been told to get tests for. And I don't know, back when the NHS used to work, they used to call you up and say the lab results are in and they're all looking fine or whatever. Now they obviously don't. I just forgot all about it. And then randomly remembered, like, I don't know how long after, a month after or something. I was like, oh yeah, I wonder what the results are. So I went on the NHS app and was scrolling through, and it's like testosterone, normal levels. Fortunately, the NHS still has me listed as female, so it was just like normal levels, normal levels, normal levels for everything. And then I got to estrogen, and the like target range is like 250 to 500, whatever the units are. It's like, I can't remember what the units are. P mol, N, M, P mol. I don't know. Anyway, the point is, my value for the last 10 years has been about right, about the same. Maybe a little bit low for a lot of it, but kind of about right. And the last one I got said 20,000. No, wait, not 20,000. What was it? I don't know. It was 20 times higher than it should have been. I said 100,000. Said 100,000 of this unit, where it's meant to be 500. So I had a little bit of a panic, and I so the stress here is, if you immediately just go to an NHS doctor, then you might get a nice normal doctor who's like, wow, okay, giving in their real opinion or whatever. You might also encounter someone who's just looking for an excuse to stop your medicine or to force you to go through the gender identity clinic process or all this kind of garbage. So I was really nervous to do that, so I didn't go straight to the NHS. I did have a panic because having the wrong levels can be bad for your health. And I was wondering maybe I was taking the wrong dose or whatever. I changed like brand of product like 11 months before, and I only have these blood tests once a year. So I was like, God, have I been taking the wrong dose for 11 months? Like, am I going to risk cancer and all these things? So I saw a private doctor, which with Gender GP, which is one of the many services I'm not affiliated with. I do use them. I think they're good. I know that some people have not necessarily recommended them, but for me, they've always worked. Anyway, and yeah, and the doctor I talked to was like, 100,000 is like not compatible with life. There's no like creature on earth that could have a value that high. You couldn't have that high even if you like took a sample from an aggressive tumor. There's no way your results are that high. It must be an error in the lab, or unless, surely not, but unless you were using gel and you put the gel on your arm like within a couple of hours of going to the blood test, and they took the reading out of that arm. And I was like, probably what happened was, because I do the gel in the morning when I'm brushing my teeth. So probably what happened was I woke up early and was like, shit, I've got to go to the blood test. Brushed my teeth, put the gel on, ran to the doctor's surgery or whatever, got there, and then they took the blood sample maybe within half an hour or 1 hour of me putting it on. So they probably basically just took a sample of estrogen gel and then did a test of estrogen on it. And of course, it was like a ridiculous result. So that was good. that was a big relief to find out that I'm probably not dying and I probably haven't been doing it wrong. And I checked my doses with the doctor and found out that if anything, they were a little bit low. So, yeah, pro tip, if you're going for hormone related blood tests and you're on gel or something like that, maybe don't maybe don't do the doctor told me, this is not my medical advice, talk to your own doctor, but told me not to do the gel if you have a blood test in the morning. Just don't do it in the morning till after the thing, so it's had like the 10 hours of sleeping or whatever to settle. So you live and learn. But so now I guess I've got to book in another test, and hopefully the GP will be fine with doing that rather than causing a big fuss if I can authoritatively say that I've already talked to a doctor. So it should be okay. But yeah, maybe use the well, the thing is that the gel I use, like I do it on both arms because it's better to just spread it out and have a bigger surface area. So yeah, I don't know. It's probably not good to take a medicine and then half an hour later go and test to see what level of that medicine is. You probably want like a more like baseline value. But anyway, pregnant women have 10,000. Okay, interesting. Because I don't think that's what it said. I think on the NHS I could probably look actually. It gives the range for like what part of your hormone cycle you'd be in if you were someone who had periods, and also it had a like level for pregnancy. I'm not going to look up now because fuck it. But I seem to remember being like, God, it's even higher than the highest possible one for cis women by like double. So good times. Right. Let's start talking about some stuff so that I don't run out of voice before we do anything. Let's close those ones. What should we talk about first? Do we want something vaguely positive or vaguely negative? Let's do something vaguely positive. Vaguely positive. Hooray. Okay. Well, it's not going to be that one. Let's do this one instead. So, recently, the Scottish Parliament decided that they were going to ban trans people from using the facilities in Scottish Parliament, which is pretty garbage. Sorry, pausing that. And of course, that's what we looked at last week and talked to Sugar about with the protest that was done outside the Scottish Parliament. It was protesting against them banning trans people from basically participating in Scottish democracy, because how can you be an MP or a staffer or anyone involved in the huge democratic process if you're not able to go to the toilet? There's been a lot of pushback in Scotland, obviously, and around the whole country in the UK against this. There's been loads of letters and protests that we've seen, and it's starting to work, which is good news. So here we've got from the Scotsman that they've said they're not going to police who uses what bathroom. And it's maybe not as good as this sounds, because obviously, how could they police it? I mean, what would they even propose if they were going to police it? Because they can't demand to see your genitals, because one, that's ridiculous, but also two, some trans people have some genitals and some have others, and that doesn't actually tell you what their current sex is or what their birth sex is or what their gender identity is or anything. You also couldn't do the same with birth certificates for the same reasons, and also because they're not legal ID. You couldn't do the same with passports because the letter on your passport doesn't have to match anything. It would be impossible to police. And that's always been, through this whole moral panic, the like number one thing that we're always saying, and all of the transphobes just pretend isn't an issue, is how would you police this? Anyway, they're not going to police it. However, Um, it does say um that they still have a complaints process somewhere. Let me find it. So it said, like other public sector bodies, and I can assure them this is not going to be policed by the corporate body, but like other sector bodies, we have a complaints process which staff can advise on, which is also set out on our website for those who wish to complain and which we will consider. But we are certainly not monitoring the use of public facilities as a corporate body. So, I mean, obviously the best position would be to not have any kind of rule on paper, whether they enforce it or not, banning trans people. Because if you ban trans people and then say, oh, we're not going to enforce it, why is the law there? Why is the rule there at all? And it just makes it seem like you're not going to waste resources enforcing it until it's politically relevant, and then you will target someone and try and ruin their life, or there'll be a trans politician that you don't like and you'll use it to prevent them from voting on some key issue, or it'll just be weaponized. Like when you have a rubbish law which is completely unenforceable, then its only purpose can be targeted weaponization against people. Um, and this is allowing what? There's a complaints process that staff can contribute to. So if you don't like your colleague, or you think that they're like too manly or too womanly or whatever, you can issue a complaint and say that they shouldn't be allowed to use the toilet. And then what? Like they say they're not going to police it, so then they're gonna what? Um, it's just a complete mess. Like this whole thing, this from the Supreme Court ruling has just made such a mess of everything. Um, but it is good to see them like back down on this in a way, because they did say they were going to ban trans people, and now they're saying, well, we're not going to do anything about it. So, firstly, if you're a trans person who goes to Scottish Parliament, then fuck them. You should do what you would always do and what you've done for the last decades of your life, and just use the toilet, which is right for you. But this has caused such a mess that even politicians within the Scottish Parliament are complaining about it, cross-party. So here we've got from Good Law Project an open letter to Scottish Parliament to change their transphobic rules. So here's the open letter here. I don't really think we need to read it, because we know what it says, that it's complete garbage and the ruling's just discriminatory and stops trans people participating in democracy properly, and also it's just plainly immoral and impossible and stupid. But interestingly, we have MSPs, so that's members of Scottish Parliament, who are current or former ministers for government of the SNP, and then we've got Liberal Democrats, and then we've got the Scottish Green Party, and then we've got Labour. So this is like cross-party, basically everyone apart from the Conservatives. Some MPs from every group. And then a huge list of staff who work there too, who are all calling on the corporate body, the people who made this stupid ruling, in order calling for them to change it. Because Scottish Parliament has done this, but the one in London, like the central UK Parliament, hasn't done this, and neither's the Welsh one. So this is an example of it being a complete mess, where what's happened is they've changed this ruling, and the EHRC has come out with this bullshit, extreme, completely unworkable guidance, and then every group around the country which has a gender critical person in charge of it has instantly jumped on it, like the transport police, this Scottish parliament thing, and a few others around the country have said, oh yeah, we're going to ban trans people, and everyone else has just done nothing. So now you don't, like, this was always going to be the case. Now, like, in theory, as a trans person, before you go anywhere, you have to, like, if you were going out for a pub crawl, in theory you have to ring up all, like, yeah, I'm British, so like, 20 pubs that you're going to go to, and be like, what toilets are trans people allowed to use here? What are you going to do to police them? Will you call the police? Are you going to get violent? For what reason? What's your justification? What's your lawyer's details for when I sue you? Like, it just doesn't make any sense. And it's the same here. So, but like adding to the confusion, the right-wing newspapers are all claiming that you can just confront people. So here, this is from the Telegraph, found by Lee Hurley from the Trans Agenda. Shops told to question. So this is something someone pointed out, which is really interesting. They always say shops told to question trans customers. Because if you're just a cis person reading it, you think, oh, this doesn't affect me then. But like the whole point is, if they knew who was trans and they didn't know, and who wasn't trans, they wouldn't need to question you, would they? So they're not just asking people who are trans, are you trans? They're asking people who they think might be trans, which is obviously going to include cis people, and actually statistically will be more cis people than trans people. So really this headline should be shops told to question customers. Shops and leisure centres can question trans people about their biological sex before letting them use changing rooms, the equalities watchdog has said. The EHRC, of course, Baroness Falconer. Those who appear to be lying. So just whoever you are watching this, it is quite possible that the person behind the desk is gender critical, some other form of ridiculous rancid bigot, like stupid, drunk, high, like they could be anything, and regardless of how you look, they could see you and they could be like, I think this person is trans. Then they could say, can you prove to me your biological sex? And you'd be like, what proof do you want? Here's my driving license, I guess, that just says my name on it. And then they'd be like, I think you're lying. And you can legally be refused entry, according to the EHRC, who are wrong about the law. So you will then lose in court, of course, if you were to refuse someone. But they're saying they can refuse you as long, and this is the important bit, as long as you are not asked in a rude or offensive manner. Right, okay, so, Baroness Falconer, could you explain to me, I think, if I see you and I think you're lying about your biological sex, then how can I say that to you? How can I refuse you entry to New Look changing rooms, as if you'd ever shop there, and say that I think that you've got the wrong genitals without being rude to you? How do I do that? Lay out some guidelines for me to do that. Gyms and hospitals could also legally ask people to provide birth certificates or passports to prove their biological sex, which doesn't prove anything. I mean, for a start, both of my passport and my birth certificate both say female on them, but that's correct. But that isn't what they want it to say, and that doesn't show my birth sex. It shows my current actual biological sex. So does that mean that if my biological sex is proven by my birth certificate and my passport, that then whenever they've said biological sex and biological woman before, they've meant including me? Well, I think quite possibly the way the law is written, yes. And I think that could be a legal challenge that ends up happening. But that isn't what, the transphobes at the EHRC want it to say. They're just too stupid and incompetent to even write something transphobic in a way that will include all trans people. But just to finish off this little chapter here of the current state of the absolute fucking mess that the Supreme Court ruling has caused about toilets and stuff, to end on a good note, the UCU, which is the University and College Union, so one of the big unions, they had a vote about trans rights, and they had 4 different motions, all trans positive, which all 4 passed overwhelmingly. So here it says, the UCU today overwhelmingly voted to stand with the trans community. Delegates attending the union's Congress backed 4 motions that committed the union to fight back against unprecedented attacks on trans people's human rights. So this is quite a big deal because the university sector does actually employ a huge amount of people, and obviously relates with lots of students too, which will affect loads of trans people, both British trans people and trans people studying abroad in the UK. Says the motions come in the wake. This is on their official website, by the way. The motions come in the wake of the Supreme Court's gender ruling, the Cass report, and the Health Secretary's decision to block trans youth's access to essential healthcare. As a result of Congress votes, UCU is now calling for employees to support the right to use gender facilities which match gender identities, and will write to Wes Streeting condemning the findings and methods of the Cass report. Come on, let's go. This is amazing. UCU Secretary Joe Grady says, our Congress has once again committed our union to stand shoulder to shoulder with the trans community in the fight for equality. This year, trans people have suffered a wave of attacks against them, but UCU remains steadfast as one of their most vocal allies. We refuse to allow trans people to be collateral of a right-wing culture war while they continue to experience violence at home, in the workplace, and on the airwaves. We will stand by them. So this is amazing. The Labour Party, who are currently in government, are, in theory, the party of the working classes and the unions, and definitely exist as a political force only because the unions allow them to, effectively, or support them up. It's a complicated relationship. But as some of the big unions start coming, ramping up into gear, getting into gear, that was a mixed metaphor, wasn't it? As they start revving up their engines to support trans people, and off the back of, like they've highlighted, the Supreme Court and the Cass report and Wes Streeting's disgusting, vindictive decision to harm a generation of children. These things have come in quick succession, and they're all quite a big deal. And sure, the UCU and other unions in the past have said, oh, we support trans people, but now they're writing letters, and now they're actively telling their employers and their members to fight back against this bigotry. I think that's quite a big deal, and it's quite positive. And this is the moment. I mean, this has been a theme of the last couple of episodes and on this channel, but maybe now, I'm not going to say the tide is turning, which is a gender critical catchphrase because they love saying that, but we might be at the low tide. We might be just getting there, where the pendulum has stopped swinging in one direction, and we are now in a place where we can start pushing it back the other way. People are waking up to how bad it's getting. We're starting to build momentum, and this kind of momentum is going to take ages and ages to build. But it means that this is a time for you to start doing something, because you can't just sit back and be like, oh, everyone else is going to do it. Oh, cool, the UCU's voted for it. Whatever, it's all fine now. It isn't. This is just one piece of the fight. But now there are more people on your side than ever. The pushback is starting. Get involved. If you're in a union, pester them to do something like this too. And if you're Scottish, then go and complain about the Houses of Parliament, and go and use the toilet. Go there as a visitor and use the correct toilet. And if you work in a shop, then don't start asking people to see their birth certificate, you fucking freak. I think that's vaguely positive. Or at least, something's happening. But that does mean we're going to talk about something bad next. We'll keep on this theme. So, Labour had their yearly meeting, the NEC, the National Executive Committee, and it sounds like it was an absolute disaster. It sounds like the party is in complete disarray, and particularly about trans people and a few other things. So this is a report of what happened by some of the representatives. So this is like from within this organization, them criticizing like their own organization. So I think it's quite a big deal. This is on labourhub.org.uk. So I mean, this whole thing just sounds like a disaster. In an unprecedented move, it was declared by the party that they will no longer be informing the NEC of membership numbers. Like, okay, why would you stop reporting your membership numbers unless they were falling really fast? The left and most trade union reps voted against the cancelling of the Equalities Committee's conferences, which are stipulated in the party rulebook, losing 15 to 14. So they've, because at least off the back of, or ostensibly off the back of the Supreme Court ruling, they were like, oh, we're going to ban all trans women from the women's conference. Actually, we're going to cancel the whole women's conference because we don't know what we're doing. So that looks like a disaster already, that Labour have cancelled their women's conference, because why? Like, it, for the last however long it's been running, there's been trans women there and it's not been an issue. And trans women can contribute to the democratic process and can be part of the Labour Party. Like, why should they be banned from it? But then to cancel the whole women's conference over it, over like at most 1% of the people there being trans, has now removed like half of the people in the country who might be part of the Labour Party without a conference to discuss issues that affect them specifically. Just complete joke. But then they've cancelled all of the Equalities Committee's conferences. So it feels like now a power grab by right-wing people within the party. I don't know. I'm not part of the Labour Party. I am not an expert in the Labour Party. This just looks like a fucking disaster to me. Despite opposition from the left, this year's women's conference has been cancelled, reducing women's involvement in policy making due to security risk, political risk, and legal risk relating to the exclusion of trans women from positive action that benefits women. So yeah, the absolute state of this fucking country is some right-wing shitheads went to the Supreme Court and somehow managed to get the court to ban trans people from even being involved in the decision and then take away our rights in the name of defending women, which the whole media went along with, which the Labour Party's gone along with, and then they've been like, oh, well, it looks like now we've finished defending women, we have to cancel the women's conference and everything to do with women and reduce women's ability to discuss things that affect them. It's just, what is so ridiculous is it's so clear to anyone who's paying attention to any of this at all that this isn't benefiting women in any way. Trans people have known, feminists have known for the entire time that the trans panic has been going on, that the attacks on trans people are going to hurt all women. And here it is just happening in front of our eyes. What we all knew what would happen. They attack trans people and then all women lose out. So bearing in mind they cancelled the women's conference, they also voted to exclude trans women from it. With 19 votes, the NEC voted to exclude trans women from positive action measures relating to women, including all women's shortlists, women's officers, being included in gender-based quotas, National Women's Committee, and the Women's Conference. So now that means that trans women just have everything even harder than they did before within the Labour Party. The whole point in things like all women's shortlists are because women are underrepresented in politics. That's not magically untrue for trans people, trans women. Trans women are even less represented in politics than cis women are. And not just because there's a lot less of us, but in reference to how many many of us there are, we're even underrepresented in that regard. We've got to go up against both misogyny and transphobia when getting into these positions. So, and also, if you ever have gender-based quotas, why the hell would you ever involve a trans woman now? Because if you're the kind of person who is being forced to have a minimum number of women. It's not just happening naturally. If they say you have to have at least a third of the people involved in your organization have to be women, you're like, oh God, how am I going to fill the spaces with women? Then you're not going to have a trans woman, are you? Because that's just a woman who is someone you don't want to include because you're the kind of misogynist who has created an environment where you're being forced to like meet a quota. But it's one who doesn't even contribute to the quota. So trans women are just now effectively excluded from anything like that. So the system they've created actually actively works against, or like works in favor of misogyny in those cases. Just complete joke. They challenged ministers, blah blah blah, and the Labour has reported that the party is experiencing financial woes. Sounds like just a complete mess, but I think there was a little bit more on trans people. So Bridget Phillipson is the Minister for Women's Inequalities, and she is made it a big deal that she's publicly anti-trans. So here, one of the people, Jess, asked her about her comments, and she said, not only the government accepts the ruling, but they meant trans women cannot use women's toilets, a move which clearly undermines trans women's dignity and puts them at risk. Phillipson restated the position, also saying that the government will be setting out a draft conversion practice that will be trans inclusive. Also, the conversion therapy bill. I think there is another thing here. Yeah, so this is just more about cancelling the women's conference. Again, Jess here emphasised a complete opposition to the Supreme Court ruling, but focused on the legal issues. Yeah, I mean, it just seems like a complete mess. The whole thing, that it just feels like the Labour. I mean, we can all see that the Labour Party is currently steering off the edge of a cliff, and every single big public decision they seem to be making just seems to be pushing them further and further right, and making them less and less popular with the only people who would ever vote for them. And it is tied up in this trans culture war stuff. For some reason, the people in control of the ship think they need to attack women's rights, attack trans people's rights, attack disabled people, attack immigrants, and it's all tied together, and they all and it's making a mess, and they're having to do things like hide their member numbers and cancel conferences, and it's just a joke. Like, what is going on? They need to change leadership. And if they change leadership, they need to not get fucking West Streeting. That is for sure. My God. There couldn't be anyone worse to lead the Labour. Like, he would be worse than Keir Starmer, for sure. Labour, you really need to sort yourselves out, because otherwise you're going to lose the next election, and it's going to be the lowest turnout election of all time, and a far-right government is going to get in power, and they're going to destroy everything you've ever done, and they're going to probably do some insane Trump bullshit and try and send you to jail or something. So just go. Moving right has not worked. That is just a fact. We can all see it. Just stop doing it. So I'm going to talk about this thing next. It doesn't really tie in with the last thing I was talking about. Who runs the media and who funds the Labour Party? Yeah. I don't know. I don't know who funds them. But they're certainly moving right. That is for sure. And it is not benefiting them politically. That is for sure. That is just brazenly obvious to everyone who is paying attention. Right. So, we're going to talk about this. This is a post I made on Blue Sky. We're looking at my posts again. Sorry, everyone. So, the other night on Saturday, I went out for my friend's birthday, and it was really good. We went out for dinner, then we went out for drinks, and it was so good to see my friend and all of our other friends that were there, or my other friends too, as we all know each other's friends and we're all friends with each other. I don't know, that's normal. But it was really good to see my friends, who I hadn't seen some of them in quite a while. and we're having a good evening out. We're talking to people, and um, yeah, good times. Anyway, I was talking to some of my friends, and a lady interrupted us and said something like, "Oh my god, I'm sorry to interrupt." I don't even know if she said that, but she interrupted and said something like, "I think you're beautiful." And I don't want it to seem like someone just came over and said a nice compliment and I got offended by it, because that isn't at all what happened. Um, I've actually been working on accepting compliments, because before I just like, oh, thanks, but I wouldn't really believe it. But I'm actually trying to like onboard them now when someone says something nice about me. Um, so I was like, thanks, but it just set off, like when she said it, it just set off a bit of a red flag to me. It just the way in which she said it was just a bit like, I don't know, it didn't necessarily come across sincere. Seemed a little bit, I don't know, maybe condescending. Um, but then I was like, okay, cool. And then I carried on talking to my friends, and then they had to go and get a drink or something. And then I ended up talking to someone else. And then this lady was suddenly like in the conversation, and she said it again, maybe like 2 or 3 more times. But then she said, as a cis woman, or I'm saying that as a cis woman, I'm almost jealous of you, or something like that. And oh man, it was so grim. I was just like, what do you mean? Like, you're almost jealous of me? I like, what do you mean as a cis? Why are you bringing this up? Like, we weren't talking about this before. We weren't talking about trans stuff. I mean, it was kind of upsetting to me and disappointing and stressful that someone would come and announce that they've clocked me, because she also asked my name, so I don't think she recognized me from internet. But yeah, so she came over, asked my name, and then said I was beautiful again, and then brought up that I was trans. And I just, like, that is always going to be a bit stressful and depressing, especially in today's political climate, because when you're on a night out with your friends, you don't want to think about it. Like, I was just having a normal time, having a good time, and I don't want to talk about trans issues when I'm at the pub. No one else was. So yeah, that's a bit demoralizing, but also just to say it in such a patronizing way. Like, I don't think she was gender critical. I don't think she was transphobic. I don't think she was a horrible person. I don't think she was like trying to upset me or anything. I think she probably in her mind thought that she was doing something positive, but fucking hell, it was just terrible. Like, maybe her heart was in the right place, but the execution was disastrous. Like 0 stars, 0 out of 10 on execution. And it just came across condescending and belittling, and just made me feel like she had just walked over and been like, wow, you look really different. Like, you're odd, you stand out. But also, oh, I support you. Like, oh, you're so nice looking for a trans person. It's kind of how it came across. And the fact I was a whole bunch of drinks in meant that it just felt like someone walked over and punched me in the stomach, and I was like, okay, I don't want to be out anymore. So that just completely ruined my night, and I went home. Um, yeah, I get, I guess, the urge of some cis people to want to signal to a trans person they support trans people. Um, but who are you doing it for? Like, if a trans person is being involved, like they're being abused or harassed, and you step in and you're like, hey, fuck off, this person's allowed to be here, go away, then wow, that's amazing. Thank you very much for doing something like that. But if a trans person just standing there having fun with their friends, and you come and butt in, you're like, oh, excuse me, just so you know, I support trans rights. Like, congratulations. Like, who is this for? It just feels like you just want like a round of applause or something. Even if you did that, even if you just came over to me and said, like, by the way, I donate to trans charities, I'd be like, okay, thanks. Good for you. So do I. I mean, that is something you should do, but like, do you need to announce it. But when you do it in the form of giving this really insincere sounding compliment and like having to like drop in that actually you're a cis person and actually you know that I'm a trans person, and yeah, it's just I just wish people would think like, would you? I think some people would say that. I think that people would go and say that about other groups of people as well. I think they walk over and say, "Oh my God, you're so attractive for a disabled person," or "Wow, you look so beautiful for an immigrant," or something. I genuinely think that happens. I think I've seen people talking about that before, and it's just like, get over yourself. You're like, have some level of empathy. Think about this for even 1 second. Um, you're not being a good person. You might have a good intention. I'm like, if this lady's watching this or whatever, I don't think that you tried to upset me, but you did, and I think you should. I don't think I'm being overly defensive. I'm not being overly offended. I'm not being like, oh, someone complimented me in the wrong way. Like, I mean, well, I guess I am being like that, but no, like that. I'm not being. I don't think I'm being pointlessly offended here or anything like that. It was just rubbish. You ruined my night, and just don't do it again. Is what I'm saying. Um, it is kind of hard to explain this kind of feeling, and maybe if you've never experienced it, you don't quite understand. But I just don't see what I am to benefit from this. Like, how am I supposed to feel good about it? It didn't seem like it was a real compliment anyway. Like from the tone and the delivery and the word choice and everything. If you wanted a compliment, you could have come up and said, "Wow, I like your top" or something, and I've been like, "Oh, thanks." And then, like a normal compliment that you would give to anyone else, like how women normally talk to each other. Here is a picture I took in the women's toilets with my friend here. This is what I look like. I don't feel like you're welcome to compliment me. You're welcome to say that you don't think this outfit works. Both of those are totally fine, but just don't do it in a fucking cringe, patronizing, condescending way. And don't do the same thing to any other trans people or any other groups of people that you're not part of, that you want to signal that you're supportive of. Like, if you wanna feel good about supporting trans people, write a letter to your MP. That's what I want to know. If you came over and said, "Hey Katie, I saw your video, and because of your video, I've written to my MP," I'd be like, "Wow, that's amazing. I'm so hype about that. That's a really good compliment. Thanks. I'm glad you did that." So that's what you should do. Don't fucking come over and say some bullshit. Right, we've dealt with that. It wasn't horrific. It just ruined my night in the moment, and it meant that I had to go home. So, it was rubbish. This is now a Katie compliment stream. No, don't do that. It could be a... No, it doesn't need to be. Please don't. What are we going to talk about next? Let's talk about... Well, this is something worth bringing up. I don't know if this is going to be a whole segment, but seeing as we're talking about what cis people can do, cis people in the audience, those listening, here is the thing you can do. There is a petition here, which I will put in the description, and it's from a new group. And they are saying, "Not in our name." So this is cis women, sorry, cis men, you need to make your own one, who are saying they do not support all these attacks on trans people's rights being made in their name. Hence, not in our name. We're a collective of cis women from every corner of society, mothers, daughters, friends, sisters, partners, colleagues, caregivers, and leaders. We represent diverse ages, backgrounds, and life experiences, united by a shared truth that demands to be heard. We reject, completely and categorically, the active discrimination and exclusion of trans, non-binary, and gender-diverse people. Those who continue to target this minority do not speak for us or represent our interests. They never have and they never will. So you can read this letter and see if it stands for what you believe. And then you can sign it if you like. And so far, they've just started out, they have 7,000 signatures. I think we can easily get this to like 10 times that many. So, I think I can put this in the chat right now. Let's do it. And if you're a cis woman, then please go and sign it. And if you're not a cis woman, please don't sign it. In fact, if you're a cis man, someone needs to do something like this. And you need to do like a... It's not going to be the same angle, because obviously the transphobes are saying we're attacking trans people's rights for women. So then women are saying, fuck off. But, man, I'm sure one of you can write a good letter. And if you do, send it to me and I'll hype it up. But it's something you can all do. All you cis women anyway. So, oh god, we're gonna talk about J.K. Rowling. Sorry everyone, another fucking J.K. Rowling moment. So, she just seems like such an idiot. It's just embarrassing. So her latest embarrassing thing is this. So here's someone called Jerry, no fucking idea who this is, saying, "Be afraid is the chilling new mantra of the trans community." First I've heard of it, Jerry, but thanks for letting me know. Northumbria police support this threatening language against women, apparently. Apparently, right, straight off the bat, we've got the claim that "be afraid" is our new mantra. Okay. And that it specifically doesn't mean men should be afraid. So even if someone said transphobes should be afraid, there's a little asterisk there, and they actually say, actually only 30% of you, because obviously we all know that the majority of transphobes are men. So I think maybe if this on its own was a thing, I would say maybe Jerry is lying, and he is trying to make it sound like trans people are threatening women when that isn't at all true. However, this is layer 1 of the idiocy. So J.K. Rowling has said, so vulnerable, so oppressed, so marginalized. Like, to be sarcastic, because obviously, famously, no marginalized, vulnerable, oppressed group has ever said their oppressors should be afraid. They've never fought back against them. There's never any evidence in history of any minority group, any marginalized group, doing any kind of threatening or violence ever. Like, the fact that there is a threat at all, in any form, even the very kind of soft "be afraid," is evidence that trans people cannot be vulnerable, oppressed, or marginalized. Like, it's just such a fucking stupid thing to say. Like, if this was a thing, and it's not, by the way, we will find out in a second. If this was a thing, your response could be something like, "I think it's bad that trans people are saying transphobes should be afraid." It very clearly is not evidence that trans people are not any of these three things. Because everyone who's ever one of these, every group that's ever been one of these three things has probably said they wish that their oppressors were afraid. I mean, it would be a better world if racists were afraid to be racist, if sexists were afraid to be sexist, if homophobes were afraid to be homophobic. Like, right, J.K. Rowling, do you not agree with that? Because I think any rational person would agree with that, because then the world would be a better place. And I don't see why that would be different for trans people. However, again, this is not the end of the stupidity. This on its own, this little chunk here, is pretty stupid. But, like, by her standards, it's not that stupid. However, let's have a look at the evidence. So we have a police officer, Northumbria police, they're on a pride march somewhere. And then there's this person with a pink hat on, holding a sign saying, "Pride, no place for TERFs or racists. Be afraid." And interestingly, maybe not Jerry, but maybe Jerry has censored this person's face. They haven't hidden the police officer's face. They've just hidden this person's face. Interesting. I wonder why. I wonder who this person could be. Here they are again. This time not with their face censored, but not from a post from Jerry. This is a photo I found. And here they are holding a sign saying no LGB without the T. However, they have very cleverly drawn a penis bell end on the T and some testicles on the G. Very funny. Very clever. So actually, we do know who this person is because they wrote about it themselves and they posted it here, uncensored, in The Critic magazine. I think it's a magazine. I don't know. The Critic. And here they are boasting about. So this is Harry Miller, who runs the group We Are Fair Cop. And We Are Fair Cop are the ones who famously did the Say Yes to Hate on Trans Day of Remembrance, the day we remember all of the trans people killed from hatred against the trans community. They did the hashtag Say Yes to Hate. Covered it a few times on this channel in the past. Like clownish idiot people. This guy's a fucking idiot. He is like an OG gender critical person. Well, not OG, as he's not from the 70s, but like from this trans panic, like from like the 2015, 2016 era, he was one of the. He's like a Graham Linehan, basically, just less famous. But I would say he's a like Graham Linehan in a number of ways. I also think I need to be careful how I describe him because in the UK we do not have freedom of speech, and he is definitely one of the people who does not like freedom of speech of trans people. So I will be careful. Everything I say is obviously my opinion. Anyway, what he is doing here, and we're not going to read the whole article. I will post it. You can read the whole article if you want. But this is a little campaign that he is doing where he thinks it is like cunning and cutting edge activism for him to hold controversial signs at pride marches. Like attend pride and hold a controversial sign and then get a selfie with a police officer to like highlight how the police don't arrest him, and also to highlight how people at the pride don't seem to care and don't throw him out. I mean, I guess an example of this would be if you went to like a US Republican Party convention and you like waved a swastika flag and then you videoed it and you're like, let's see if anyone comes over and tells me to fuck off. And then none of them do. You might be like, suspicious. So I guess this is like some kind of attempt to do that, but not as brazen as that, because he's not doing something like that. That would be quite an extreme thing to do. He's written a sign here that, I mean, it's not a very good sign. It's not very well written, but like, you know, this is what happens when a cishet person tries to do a pride sign. Like, where's the bubble writing? Where's the like, you know, the nice little pictures and stuff. Anyway, very lazy. But saying no pride is no place for TERFs or racists, like, sorry, but I think that's quite a tame sign. I think most people there probably think there shouldn't be transphobes or racists, you know? Be afraid. I mean, you could say that be afraid was more threatening than if he didn't say be afraid, but this is I just think if anything this just shows that this guy Jerry, whoever the fuck that was, and J.K. Rowling have just never been to a pride parade, because there are way more confrontational and controversial chants and signs than that. Like way more. This is quite tame, and I'm not saying I endorse all of them, but like pride is a protest against oppression and marginalization, and so people there are going to be quite angry and are going to have some things to say, and that's like part of the democratic process, is people going to protests and saying what they think. So this is all just kind of, it's very embarrassing. So here we have like a situation where they couldn't even find a controversial sign at Pride. Like they somehow were unable to find a more controversial sign than racists fuck off, you should be afraid. I don't. And then they've had to hide who he is. Like, maybe intentionally, maybe not. We don't know. But so that people don't realize, but then he's gone and fucking posted about it, like, proudly. He thinks this is like some kind of cutting edge activism, like, oh, look what I've done. The police have taken a smiling photo of me holding a sign saying no racist. Like, they probably didn't read it. It's kind of ugly. It's not very exciting. I don't know, it's just a bit lame all around. And then J.K. Rowling has joined in, like, amplifying this false flag. I mean, it's just like the lamest false flag. So a false flag is where, like, it's from, like, it's like a war term where you commit an attack on your own people and then claim it was your enemy in order to justify, like, a harsh response. And the gender criticals do this all the time, by the way, like, all the time. They will make up all kinds of fake things. In fact, it did remind me of that. I was pointing out how it's similar to this sign. So this sign says genital preferences are transphobic. And this is from like 10 years ago or whatever. It's got the University of Liverpool here. And a gender critical person made this and they stuck it up. They took a photo of it and they said, look what trans people have done. And then it blew up on the internet and all the gender criticals were in a rage about it. This thing that a gender critical had done. They then admitted it and were saying, oh, by the way, I made this. Half of them seemed to know it and carried on lying about it anyway. The other half of them didn't even know. And then it got to the point where it became such a like staple meme of the gender criticals that Caroline Lowbridge for the BBC, who wrote that horrific, like, insane article, Some Trans Women Are Pressuring Lesbians, which multiple people have done very in-depth takedowns of, including Sean, who's done a series of videos on it that good you should check out. She posted a link to this picture in the article as evidence that trans women are pressuring lesbians. And the link that went on, when you click through, the person who made this sign was replying underneath saying, by the way, I made this. Like, so it's like creating their own little false flag thing and then amplifying it. And then when they're corrected on it, they just don't care. It just doesn't matter to them. Caroline Lowbridge didn't care that the article she wrote, like, I mean, she didn't care that she saw the only person she actually talked to was a cis woman who's very transphobic and went on some rant about how trans people should be lynched. Herself was a rapist. She didn't care how one of the pieces of evidence she used was actually created by a gender critical person and just totally made up. She didn't care how the other piece of evidence she used was from a group that said all trans people are rapists. But here and again, like, his J.K. Rowling sharing, like, amplifying this to millions of people, sharing this thing, saying, oh, it's the new thing from the trans people. We Are Fair Cop. This is the group that Harry Miller runs or operates in or is related to in some way. Just retweeting this. Just like, yeah, great. Here's our false flag. Who cares? Like, it's just good she's boosting it. It's like, I caught myself. I nearly said, do they not have any shame? Of course they don't have any shame. They do not give a fuck. These people do not care about what is true or not. They don't care about, like, being honest. They don't care about being rational. They don't care about being internally consistent. All of those things are woke. All of those things are burdens. All of those things get in the way of what their ultimate goal is, which is removing trans people's rights and ultimately creating, you know, the gender critical's ultimate goal. The gender critical movement's ultimate goal is to create a world without trans people in it. And anything on that way towards achieving that is just justified. Because when they've convinced themselves that trans people are raising women and mutilating children's genitals and all paedophiles and some insane cult that runs the world or whatever, when they believe that, then of course creating some little fake sign and lying about it isn't a big deal. I mean, if it causes more people to hate trans people, then it doesn't matter if you lied, right? Like, that's just... it benefits the world. Like if you told a lie and saved everyone's life, then you'd just be like, oh well, my lie was justified. So it's just the same thing here. There's like that's just how they see it. Um so yeah, like who cares if she's like knowingly or otherwise amplifying this thing, which is knowingly or otherwise amplifying an obvious false flag. Like they're on board with it. Who cares? It's great. Someone's falling for this bullshit. Let's keep pushing it. But yeah, it's all just a bit. It's very embarrassing. It's very cringe. But what's the kind of the worst thing about this is this one hasn't really landed. Like I don't think this is really gonna make waves. I'm kind of surprised. This is why I'm not certain that she didn't know about this, because it's kind of lame. Like it's not that controversial. Um so why would she be hyping it up? Why is this person's face censored? It's all a bit sus. I don't know. But it's not like gonna get a big traction in the same way that like this has, I don't think. However, what is so like grim about this stuff is people do fall for it. This does gain ground. Like the BBC fucking published this. The BBC, who are meant to have some kind of editorial standards. They obviously have some gender critical editor there. But the BBC literally just posted as evidence that trans people are bad this thing that someone just made in Photoshop and printed out and just lied about trans people with. And because the media is so biased and the politicians don't give a fuck, or they hate us too, that there's no consequences for anything like this. And so when, you know, this one might have missed, or maybe it will come and become something, but this one might miss, but it just shows how ready the whole movement is to just make up something to be angry about, amplify it, lie about it, and then now it is just true in their minds about trans people. This is now just law. And you see them do this not just about trans people as a group, but they do it about individual trans people. I mean, most trans people of any kind of platform at all, they've done it about me. They create law, and one of them will just make something up, another one will amplify it and then say that they believe it, and then another one will take it as true and will write an article about it, and then the person who first made it up will be like, see, it is true, here's an article about it. Like they were all for a while they were convinced that I was a truck driver. I think that I haven't seen that one in ages, but that was a thing that they believed for a couple of years. They think that I have a daughter. I don't have any children. This whole bunch, they think I've got cheek implants, which I haven't. If I did, I wouldn't be ashamed of them, and I'd be fine saying that I did. But I don't. But the thing is that if you deny it, that's evidence to them. If you don't deny it, that's evidence to them. If one of them has seen it from 3 separate sources, which are just 3 separate idiots repeating the original claim, then it's now like cemented in their mind as true. And this is how they build the whole movement. And if the person who made the lie see other people believe in it, and they think, I lied about this, but they don't care, because it's for the greater good. So yeah, here's J.K. Rowling participating in a false flag, either knowingly or not, stupid and embarrassing either way, and this will not be the last time she does it. Very embarrassing. Oh yeah, one other thing I wanted to add. This guy is just this Harry Miller guy. He probably says it in this thing. Wow, a whole article without the word woke in. Incredible. Just a general, just a generic right-wing man, I guess, views. Anti-woke. I do think it's interesting that of all the things he could have written, pride, no place for TERFs, be afraid. He could have just written that. He could have written anything. He specifically said, or racists. I just think it's interesting in a world where gender criticals are pivoting more and more towards being like anti-immigrant that is just include like, why did you write that? Didn't I mean it's definitely true that people at Pride are often anti-racist, but they're also um obviously anti-homophobe and anti sexist as well, and a whole number of other things. They're usually pro-disabled people's rights, etc. You know, when you fight for human rights, it ends up being a thing that you noticed everywhere. But when a whole bunch of high-profile gender criticals, here for example, Jean Hatchett, who went on Talk TV talking about sexual offending amongst men from Afghanistan and Eritrea, and here Kathleen Stock's latest headline, sorry, it's super blurred, saying by refusing to see that ethnicity matters, bearing in mind their like whole fucking slogan is sex matters, we fail grooming victims again. You know, they are, the gender critical movement is kind of slowly pivoting to race. I don't know. Didn't have to write that there. I don't think that this is just a total coincidence. That you see a gender critical person also talking about race. I think when you view the world, in order to view the world in a way in which trans people deserve to not have human rights, the logical structures you have to create in your mind, the arguments you have to make, inevitably will lead you down the path of thinking the same things about other groups of people. That's just how it's always going to work. That is how the far right is onboarding people to their views by using transphobia to trick people into buying their arguments about one group, and then it's so much easier to believe those about other groups too once you've already bought them. So yeah, we'll see. The J.K. Rowling continues to be a entry point into the far right pipeline, and she seems to be getting more deranged every day. Still, could you believe it? She has not hit peak derangement yet. It's gonna get worse. So, what else have we got here? Oh, we have to talk about the EHSE as well. I feel like every single week is just me being like, wow, look, Baroness Faulkner's evil. Wow, look, J.K. Rowling is stupid. Wow, look, Graham Linehan is pathetic. Wow, look, Wes Streeting is rancid. So it's pretty much the thing. We've definitely been more UK focused than normal the last couple of weeks. We will talk about some other. I'm sure other countries exist. Allegedly, I've heard, rumored. But we're doing some more UK stuff today. Oh no, all right, okay, say it. We've got an American thing. Let's do that next. We'll shake it up. There's got to be some Americans in the chat. Shout out to all the Americans from Utah, which I'm sure is some of you. 1 second. Okay, so someone in the chat here saying, in terms of equality, ethnicity does matter. Yeah, I totally agree. For what you've just said, people of color tend to be marginalized and systematically oppressed. We should be doing more to uplift those in communities than a random white area. Like, totally agree. But it's the same with the phrase sex matters. Like, sex does affect your life. Having certain sex characteristics can affect how you interact with the world, and it's not something we can just pretend doesn't exist. Like, it leads to things like women's pain not being taken seriously, and conditions like endometriosis, which a huge number of women, something like crazy, like 1 in 5 women or something, suffer with at some point in their life, just being like completely not taken seriously by the medical establishment for hundreds of years, including still today. But when the gender criticals say sex matters, they mean we don't give a shit about women. We want to pretend trans people can't change sex as an excuse to take away the human rights. When someone like Kathleen Stock says ethnicity matters because of grooming gangs, she's not saying, oh, look, people in marginalized communities are more likely to be the victim of sexual assault. She's saying, oh, look, 30% of all rapists are from another country. It's like, yeah, what about the other 70%, dickhead? Uh, it's important to take both the literal meaning of what they're saying and the context of who's saying it and why they're saying it and what the argument they're making all together. And a lot of things that gender critical people say, if taken literally, wouldn't be terrible. When they say something like sex matters, I'd be like, yeah, it affects me too. For example, just earlier in this episode, we were talking about hormone levels. That's part of my sex. And that matters to me and it affects my healthcare. And if you were to record me as male, for example, then it would make a complete mess of that and my healthcare wouldn't be as good. So it matters to me. But that's not what they're saying when they say sex matters. So I didn't mean to sound like I was dismissing the idea that ethnicity is a thing, like, that affects people's lives. As a white person, like, oh, what are all these fucking ethnics complaining about? No, not at all. The opposite, in fact. I'm pointing out that anything that comes out of Kathleen Stock about ethnicity is going to be, at best, garbage, and at worst, actively hostile against people from, like, minority ethnicities. For sure. I hope that was clear. Running out of voice juice. Let's get onto this thing from Utah. So, Utah lawmakers, a while ago, banned trans healthcare for 18 and under, which was horrific and has harmed a lot of children. So it's been in place for a couple of years, but part of the justification was that of the ban, because they did the same thing the UK's done. They did an emergency ban without asking any experts, without any evidence or anything. Just, pow, we're just going to take healthcare away from all these children with absolutely no impact assessment or contingency or any understanding of the situation at all, purely because trans people are a culture war and we want to get votes and we hate them. But they also, just like the UK, commissioned a report. However, the Utah lawmakers made a fatal mistake. They seem to have commissioned some people who aren't right-wing culture warriors to do the report. So they should have got Hillary Cass or RFK Jr. or some fucking wacko, Liz Truss. They could have got on it. Like, they should have got someone who hates trans people and who doesn't like science to write the report. And they accidentally did it the other way around. And they got some real scientists and healthcare experts to review the available evidence of trans healthcare. And what seems to have happened is they have done the largest ever, if I understand correctly, what's the word? Review, meta-analysis of all of the studies on trans healthcare. It says here, notably, our search has yielded a larger number of primary studies than any of the systematic reviews that underwent data extraction, the report states proudly. So they've done like the biggest ever review of trans healthcare, and obviously it's come out in favor of trans healthcare. So, yeah, it says here, the experts concluded in a more than 1,000-page report, overall there were positive mental health and psychosocial functioning outcomes as a result of gender-affirming care. But Republican legislators are already dismissing the findings. What a fucking surprise. This is just the story. The current path for trans healthcare is, do you have a right-wing government? In which case, they're going to ban it regardless of the evidence. Then they may or may not issue a report. And the report's either going to be done by a right-wing wacko, culture warrior knobhead, who's going to say, the evidence doesn't count. Or it's going to be done by some scientists and they're going to say, here's the evidence. And then the people in charge are going to say, fuck the evidence. Or it's going to be done by competent people and they're going to say, here's the evidence. And then the people in charge will be like, oh, okay. And then they'll support trans healthcare. That's like the full range of outcomes. And obviously in the UK, we had right-wing shitheads doing a report and then a right-wing government taking over and saying, okay, we're going to ignore the evidence. In Utah, they messed up a little bit and they had scientists doing it. But in other countries, in most other countries, or most other like developed countries, most other countries that have done recent reviews on trans healthcare have concluded that trans healthcare benefits trans people. But so this article here is by Assigned Media. This is by Evan Urquhart, who I really recommend this newsletter website, Assigned Media. If you don't know this one, I don't know if I plugged this one on my channel yet. It's another really good one that does lots of detailed articles on this kind of stuff. It's really good. Strong recommend. Also, Evan's great, and you should follow him on Twitter. But so the authors found a total of 277 studies that included data on 28,000 young people with gender dysphoria. So covering a lot of people here. They also, the methods and findings were summarized. Oh, it says that the report focuses on 89 studies of puberty blockers or gender-affirming hormone therapy that looked at high-priority outcomes, blah, 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 blah. The methods and findings of these 89 studies were summarized, and each one was evaluated for a risk of bias. That is something that the CAS report did not do of itself or of any of the studies, and was one of the things that the recent peer review of the CAS review heavily criticized them for, because there's like, it's not just like, oh, does this look biased to me? There's like field-wide system. There's like things in place in order to have some kind of attempt at objectively measuring bias. I want to say industry standards. I don't know what that. It's not an industry. It's like the equivalent of industry standards for scientists. Standard practice ways of measuring bias, and it's something CAS review didn't do. Anyway, this did. So that's already better than the CAS review. But there's a really good quote here. It says, the conventional wisdom among non-experts has long been that there are limited data on the use of trans healthcare in pediatric patients with gender dysphoria. However, results from our exhaustive literature searches have led us to the opposite conclusion. So here they're saying, the meme that everyone keeps fucking repeating is, oh, there's not enough evidence, there's not much evidence, there's not very good quality evidence. And when they actually looked at all the evidence, they're like, oh, that's actually not true at all. There's lots of evidence, and there's lots of good quality evidence. Of course, there could always be more evidence, and there could always be better quality evidence, because science on medicine and people is always going to be imperfect, because you're never going to be able to test a medicine on every single person. You're never going to be able to control for everything in every single study. You're never going to be able to do infinitely long follow-up times and stuff. You could always do a longer study. You could always do a bigger cohort. You could always control for another variable. But in comparison to healthcare standards and quality of evidence standards generally across the board for trans healthcare, there is actually decent evidence for it, and there's actually quite a lot of it. One notable section deals with rates of regret, desistance, and detransition in the literature. Includes 32 studies that reported rates of persistence, desistance, or regret in their findings. I hate the terms persistence and desistance. I'll do a rant on that another time. While it remains impossible to state a single detransition rate, the collected studies provide a good way of thinking about the range of possibilities, from stopping treatment and restarting, to stopping losing care due to insurance issues or an overly great travel distance to the clinic, to patients who stop because they now identify with their birth gender. Many mainstream media have misreported this data in ways that overstate the prevalence of detransition. Do you think? And misconstrue it as being synonymous with regret and re-identification with birth sex. Yeah, so this is something I've been pointing out for a while, is when they talk about detransition, it's just implied by the transphobes and the media in general that everyone who detransitions does it because they regret being trans. They regret coming out as trans, or they regret transitioning. But in reality, the majority of people who detransition do it because their family kicked them out on the street and they can't get a job. They no longer have access to healthcare because the government has decided that trans people don't get healthcare anymore. A whole number of other things, like it's not even medically suitable for them, etc., etc. And true regret, and even some of the people who come out as trans and start medical transition and realize it's not for them, don't regret coming out and don't regret exploring transition. They just now know what is right for them. And the group of people who regret transitioning, regret some form of medical transition, is a fraction of the people who detransition. And in fact, quite a lot of my closer trans friends detransitioned at one point in their lives. I don't think it's that uncommon at all, actually. I mean, I definitely like half of the ones that I know closely at some point in their life tried coming out and were either shunned by their families or lost their job or weren't sure and basically hid back in the closet, or had issues with their relationship, or there's so many reasons, and then again later came out again, and some medically transitioned and then medically detransitioned and regret detransitioning. They regret medical detransition. And I think, in my opinion, I don't have the evidence to claim this, I would be unsurprised if there was a higher regret rate for detransition than there was for transition. I wouldn't be surprised about that at all. I suspect the majority of people who detransition regret it or wish they didn't have to. Anyway, here the authors state in the conclusion section, with regards to any misgivings that stakeholders may have had about allowing pediatric patients to receive pharmacological and surgical treatments over concerns about future regret. Gosh, they like to write it in long-winded ways, don't they? We found that there is virtually no regret associated with receiving the treatments, even in the very small percentages of patients who ultimately discontinued them. Reasons for discontinuing are varied, but changed minds about gender identities is only a very minor proportion overall. Like, I mean, that's just what I said. I just ruined it. Sorry, spoilers. So, unlike the highly publicized CAS review, which released in the UK, the Utah review is low on opinion and high on reviewing the evidence. I mean, obviously that's Evan's opinion, but still, I think that can definitely be said about the CAS review. Like, it is famous for making recommendations and providing no evidence for them at all, dismissing evidence offhand, like just making these wild speculations about all kinds of things. Oh, I mean, Evan's written it here. This stands in contrast with the CAS review, which opined on a wide variety of topics, from the cause of trans identity to the use of pornography, often departing widely from the evidence base to do so. So yeah, it's a more data-driven approach, and this is just the story we are going to see time and time again. When they look at the evidence is going to recommend trans healthcare, and then either they're going to just do another review run by some quack who says all the evidence doesn't count, or they're going to just dismiss it and ignore it. And it's up to us to just keep making noise about this. This is another one. Since I've been doing daily videos on this channel, how many fucking times have I had to do I got to think up a new thumbnail and a new title now for this. Another one, nor another one. Like, people are going to stop clicking on them because they're just going to be like, wait, I've already seen this one. Like, haven't there already been like 100 studies that have shown the CAS reviews a load of bullshit? Yes. Yes, they have. And yes, there's going to be more. And yes, I'm going to cover all of them on this fucking channel. So unsubscribe now if you're sick of it, because we just have to keep pushing this. The science is hardline opposed to the gender critical position. It's hardline opposed to what West Treating is doing in the UK. It's hardline opposed to what they're doing in Utah. The evidence supports trans healthcare, and that is why internationally before the trans panic started, the medical consensus across the world, and has been for decades, was supporting trans healthcare for adults and children. And that's, you can't fight science forever. That is where it's going to end up. And the media and politics are going to fight against it. And we have to fight back, because scientists are, and I love you, scientists. Scientists are fucking shit at publicity and getting a word out there and teaching the public about what they've just discovered in a way that people actually understand it. Science communication is a real skill, and 99% of scientists are terrible at it. So yeah, if you live in Utah, call up your representatives and stuff and tell them this report's just come out. It is absolutely impossible to justify a ban on trans healthcare given your own fucking report that you commissioned. And if you live anywhere else, in another state in the US, in Canada, in the UK, in a non-English speaking country, you can say, this is the biggest literature review ever, biggest meta-analysis of this situation so far, and there's probably going to be more in the future. And it is one of many, including like the one that just happened in the UK, the one that happened in Germany, the one that happened in Australia, blah, 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 blah. List them all out and be like, what are you going to do about it? This is going to get worse and worse, and this scandal is going to be like part of your reputation. If you're in office right now and you're presiding over this, do you think this is going to get better for you in 5 years when there's another 5 years worth of studies pointing out how terrible this is? No, it's going to look worse and worse for you. And if you don't act soon, you're going to like be voted out of office and just be you're going to have a section on your Wikipedia page saying you're a science denier and you hurt trans children. Can we get Brian Cox to speak out on trans rights? I'm sure there's multiple people called Brian Cox, but I don't think you're going to get the astronomy guy to do that somehow. That is the physicist, and there's an actor too. Okay, so maybe you're talking about the actor. But if you're talking about the physicist, it's not going to happen. Because, his wife is, a gender critical activist. A J.K. Rowling fan. An early blocker of me. Very exciting. There was this amazing moment where, I mean, I couldn't believe it at the time. I guess it's standard gender critical affair now, but I was having an argument because I was like, how can you say that sex is binary? It's completely not. This was like 10 years ago. I don't quite remember exactly what I said, but it's something along the lines of sex isn't binary. And she said, yes, it's binary like a light switch. And I was like, well, this happens to me, my domain of speciality. This is now we're talking about electronic engineering. Actually, that's not true at all. But also, what about dimmer switches? Like, obviously you understand that they're not binary, right? And she was like, no, even dimmer switches are binary. Because there's a point at which they're off, and there's a point at which they're on. Maybe if you don't understand how lights work or what photons are and stuff. I'm not laughing at you, by the way, if you don't understand it. Like, I happen to have done my degree in it. That isn't how it works, actually. There's no clear point at which lights are on or off when there's a dimmer switch. And even with a normal switch, when you go click and it appears to you to turn on, actually how the current going through the light, it doesn't go from being off to suddenly being on, like through time. I'm going the wrong way for you. So it's not like in time it's going along 0, 0, 0, you click the switch, it goes whoop, and now it's on in an instant. If you zoom in and look at what's happening, actually it goes up, I would say slowly, very quickly in time, but zoomed in, it goes up, and then it will reach the top, and then it will bounce back down, and then it will bounce back up, and then it goes like this, and then it settles on. And then that is the current going through the lighting element or across, when you turn the LED on or whatever. And then only shortly after that time, it will start emitting light. And if it's like a traditional lighting element, then it has to heat up. And then it will start emitting some photons and then more and more and more. So it's complicated. The physics of it is complicated, kind of. Not in a way that I can be bothered to explain now in detail. But what is so funny to me is her husband must know that. Like, there was a publicly shouting about how dimmer switches are binary, and like, can you imagine? Can you imagine her being like, "I'm having this argument with this stupid trans person," and him being like, "Oh, okay, what are they saying?" She's like, "They're saying binary, like light switches and dimmer switches aren't binary," and he would have been like trapped in this position where he has to back her up or be like, because he must understand the physics of it. So I don't know. It made me laugh. Anyway, so I don't think you're going to get him saying any pro-trans stuff, which maybe is a shame to you, but I think he's a bell end. So there you go. I didn't do the best explanation of a light switch turning on. I need to draw a graph really, but I assure you I'm correct. You can look it up. So we've done that one. Let's. What else we got? What's the time? I probably should cover both of these two things. We'll give some others a miss till next time. Katie's shitty charts. Well, now you say it. Let's see if I can find it. This is going to be super cringe, by the way. I probably shouldn't just publish this. I haven't done a check to see how legit this is. Basically, let's see if I can open this in a new tab. Maybe we can get away with it. I do like graphs because I'm an idiot, and let's get rid of that. I made a while ago a website, which I was doing. I put a load of graphs on it, and I can't really see this very well. I went through all the thrash metal, the big four, and rated all of their songs out of 5, and then plotted the quality of their albums on a graph over time. His Anthrax, his Slayer, his Megadeth. As you can see, this was done in like 2013 or something. His Metallica. Anyway, you can see the classic thrash metal shape, which is the peak in the late 80s, early 90s, the crash mid 90s, early 2000s, and then the slow recovery that Slayer was kind of immune to, but they had some dubious era. Anyway, graphs, we're done with graphs. We're going to talk about something else now. We're going to talk about, we're going to talk about this because this is loaded up first. So we had some news in the UK. The UK again, hooray. So this is according to LBC. This article is trash, by the way. Christian teacher sacked after refusing to use trans pupils' preferred pronouns. Uses religious discrimination case. Those horrible trans people have, trans person walked in and said, "My new pronouns are," and then the teacher was like, "But please, I'm a God-fearing Christian." And then they were instantly executed on the spot because that's how trans ideology works. That's the vibe the headlines give in. Let's see if that's all that happened. All I did was refuse to say someone's preferred pronouns, not even their real pronouns, and suddenly I lost my job. Right, let's have a look. Let's look at the blurb underneath. A Christian teacher who was sacked. Hang on a minute. After looking at trans child's online safeguarding report and transcribing it to her personal computer, has lost an unfair dismissal case and religious discrimination claim. Right. So, wait, what? Are you telling me this teacher actually was nothing to do? Well, I'm sure it's this too. But the issue is that they were copying private identifying information of a child at their school onto their own computer, potentially sharing it with others. The teacher who cannot be named. By the way, slight aside here, they've not named this teacher. And the reason they've not named this teacher is because it involves a trans kid, and the trans kid is not out. And potentially naming the teacher could out the trans kid, and the judge in this case rightly ruled that this kid deserves privacy for life and no one should ever be allowed to out them as a trans person. That is good. So it's good that this teacher hasn't been named. However, it would be, if ever able to separate these two people, be good to name and shame this teacher, of course. But it's way more important that we protect the child's identity. So if you're the kind of snooping person who can work out who this is, don't start putting it everywhere because it could ruin this child's life. Which is what this teacher was trying to do, by the way. But they can't name this teacher, but they can name some poor random trans nurse who used the toilet at work, and now a bunch of gender critical people are trying to ruin her life. As just double standards, and it is completely garbage. Anyway, the teacher who cannot be named was informed in 2021 a child. I'm not even going to say it. This article is trash. That a trans boy would be joining her class. The teacher raised concerns. The teacher said, "I am a transphobic dickhead, and I want to harm this child." The head teacher, they said that to the head teacher. I'm affirmed that I am required to give affirmative care to somebody who may regret it later. By the way, all that she was asked to do was just talk to the child as a person and to not insult them and not out them for no reason and like delve into their private life. She wasn't being asked to inject hormones. She wasn't being asked to perform surgery. She was being asked to not be a fucking prick. Like, who would regret that? Oh, I asked my teacher to call me a person at school and I regret it my whole life. It's just so pathetic. These fucking lying losers. It just disgusts me. I am convinced that a blanket affirmative care would be very damaging, potentially leading to irreversible physical and mental harm. No, you're not. You just don't like trans people and you want to treat them like lesser in your classroom. The head teacher said, "You are entitled to hold your own personal beliefs and we fully support you in a right to hold those beliefs. However, as those beliefs, if acted on, could be a direct breach of GDPR and an act of direct discrimination, you must not act on them." So, I kind of think this I mean, of course you're entitled to hold your personal beliefs. Like, what are we going to do? Go in someone's brain and cut the bit of their brain out that thinks that? Like, thought police them? It is impossible, almost certainly immoral in every single conceivable circumstance. People can believe whatever the fuck they want. So I agree with this person. But this idea that these people with horrific beliefs are not going to act on them, I think is kind of short-sighted, because people's beliefs and their actions aren't unrelated. People act on their beliefs. That is what beliefs do to you. People with garbage beliefs are probably going to do garbage things. However, they are right to say, you are technically allowed to think what you want. What can we do about it? However, if you harass this child or, like, breach their privacy, then you will be in trouble. The child was literally moved to another class to safeguard him from any potential harm from this teacher. Like, this is what happens when you hire gender critical teachers. They're a safeguarding risk to the students because they are horrific. The tribunal had they were given strict instructions, including that she must use the name and pronouns the family requested when interacting with the child, because otherwise she'd be outing this child who doesn't deserve to have their life ruined because of some stupid prick who doesn't like trans people. The teacher escalated her concerns, and a representative wrote to the school saying it would go against her conscience, informed by her Christian faith, to affirm a young child in their gender dysphoria. Cool. All right, mate. Could you just point me to the bit in the Bible where it says that you have to treat trans people like subhuman scum? Can you just point to the bit which says Jesus said, "Thou must hate little children who happen to be trans"? It isn't in there. It's not because you're a Christian. There's plenty of Christians who aren't absolute dickheads who want to harm children. What are you talking about? It doesn't mention trans people in the Bible anywhere. In fact, Jesus says things like, love your neighbor, and talks about how even the Samaritans, the people who everyone in that time hated, could be good. Like, his whole fucking thing was about how you should treat people with respect. And yet, here you are, pretending the reason you want to abuse this child is because you're a Christian. That's bullshit. I'm not one of these Christians. I'm not one of these people who thinks, you know, oh, all Christians should be good, and the Bible tells only good. The Bible is full of all kinds of fucking bullshit, and I think that as a Christian, it's your like moral responsibility to not believe every single thing in the Bible, because lots of it is bad. But it's totally possible to be a Christian and not be a shit person, because there's actually more than one of them who fit that description. There's actually quite a few Christians who are not shit people. So it's totally possible to be a Christian and trans, or to be a Christian and not hate trans people. It's just a pathetic excuse to try and hide behind because you want to be protected in court to abuse this child. She believed in the truth of the Bible. Sex is a God-given reality which should not be conflated with gender identity. Being male or female is an immutable biological fact. Just effortlessly blending gender-critical ideology with far-right evangelical Christian garbage. But anyway, the bit here it says, during that school year, she repeatedly accessed the child's online safeguarding file and the school's system. She created a report on the system regarding any welfare concerns she may have about the child. She was fully aware that her use of the system in this manner was unauthorized, and indeed she accepted during cross-examination that her access was wrong, not only on this occasion, but on all subsequent occasions. So she knew what she was doing was immoral and wrong and dangerous and possibly out of this child. She had gone behind the back of the school's designated safeguarding lead. The teacher wrote a letter to the school after accessing the child's report several times saying, I remain convinced the school is disregarding its duty of care. Fuck off, you absolute dickhead. Based on the information I have seen and heard, Child X is suffering from serious mental health problems. If they have any mental health problems, besides you claiming that being trans is a mental health problem, which it isn't, if they have any, they're probably exasperated by the fact that they had to be moved to a different class because their teacher was trying to abuse them and out them in front of a group of people who they didn't want to be outed in front of, and then who was going behind their back and disregarding safeguarding rules to access their private files. Like, you know, if there are people involved in like conspiracy style actions like this about you and you're a child, maybe it'll make you a bit paranoid. Maybe it'll make you feel unsafe. Maybe it'll make you feel worthless. Like, these disgusting things that you're doing, they don't have no impact on children. The school did not discover they had been accessing the files or transcribing them to her personal computer and memory stick until the teacher's legal representatives told them. God, fucking hell. After discovering A was accessing the reports, the teacher was suspended, and formal disciplinary hearing, she was fired. So, of course, she lost this. The information is hugely private to the family and is a snapshot. She cannot access it, so she has not seen all the work being done by the school, and she did not ask. Like, just brazenly breaching safeguarding rules, putting a child at risk, treating a child as lesser because of how they were born, trying to hide behind religion. And what did the article go with? Pronouns! Every single fucking time they write an article about pronouns and someone losing their job and a woke mob cancelling people, it turns out that they were some fucking freak who was putting a child's safety and future at risk because of some deranged, idiotic belief system they have. Yeah, it's just always the same. They're all like this. Yeah, it's just going to go on a biological sex. Yeah, this is from the judge, and this is uh a good ruling and written in a garbage way. Um, so they have we conclude that the restricted reporting order should remain in place. In short, the right of the trans child to live a life in their chosen gender for the rest of their life prevails. If we were to place a restriction on the duration of a restricted reporting order, there is a risk that the biological sex of the child could become known in the future. So this is where it's like so depressing that the gender critical framing has become so embedded in like British media and law. Like it's just going to take so long to root all this garbage out. The sex of the child, I mean, it's the same with the sex of any child. You don't you don't necessarily know all of the bits because they don't do all of the tests. Um, but here they're just implying that what they mean is birth sex, and that is, this rule, this sentence would be kind of fine if they had said there is a risk that the birth sex of the child could become known in the future. But where they just keep framing it as biological sex versus gender identity, they're constantly just framing like real biological changes to people. Like if this kid is going through school and is medically transitioning, then their biology is actually changing, and you can see some of their biological sex. Like the bits that you interact with any person. So to frame like their birth sex as their biological sex is just so frustrating. Anyway, the ruling is still decent, but it's just fucking hell. This could result in the child's biological sex becoming aware to groups of people, including, for example, their future classmates, employers, partners, friends, and indeed, in time, their own children. Interesting framing. I mean, you would expect maybe their children would find out. But anyway, Child X has a right to privacy regarding their birth sex for the remainder of their life. Yes, they do. Thank you very much for that. Yeah, I feel like if all of this stuff they started saying birth sex instead of biological sex, we would be much further along in the propaganda wars. Gender criticals have done very well to embed this bullshit framing. And I think we need to push back against it quite hard. Anyway, every time you ever see a headline that says someone loses their job because of pronouns, you just know for a fact that isn't what happened. And it didn't happen here. And this person is a fucking dickhead. Right. We have one more thing to talk about. God, I was going to do a short one. So I think this is kind of positive, and I want it to give people some energy. So again, UK focused. Sorry everyone, we're talking about the UK again. So the EHRC is our government equalities watchdog, whatever that means. It's originally was meant to be a group that fights for human rights, and it is now being led by Kishwa Falconer, the Baroness, who is a single issue anti-trans activist. And she is responsible for the direction of the EHRC into becoming an anti-trans lobby group. But anyway, there's a bunch of articles here, and I just want everyone to realize how bad, like obviously how bad the EHRC is and how bad Baroness Falconer is, but how bad everyone's realizing it is. And this, like, we've been talking about this for quite a few years now, but finally, like, again, something's starting to happen, and we're starting to get momentum on this. So first of all, we've got splits in the Labour Party over the Supreme Court ruling. A growing number of MPs question Keir Starmer's claim that the ruling has brought clarity, because it hasn't. It says after the UK Supreme Court delivered its ruling on gender recognition, the government verdict from Keir Starmer downwards was unanimous. This had brought welcome clarity to a vexed debate that everyone could move forward. Nearly 6 weeks on, and a growing number of Labour MPs, not to mention campaigners and human rights groups, are much less sure. So they're all having arguments about it behind the scenes. That's good to know. People are fighting back against it. That is good to know. One senior Labour MP highlighted the plight of a person who has long lived as a woman, uses women's changing rooms in her job with the ambulance service, and now fears being forced to tell colleagues she is trans. The Supreme Court ruling creates a real mess that needs sorting out. In private, a number of MPs go further. While they accept, I fucking hate this. While they accept the issue is complex, involving sometimes overlapping and competing rights and the needs of trans people and those who require single-sex spaces. By the way, there can be complications here. Absolutely. I think you need to just be aware that sex isn't binary. And if you're going to try and create any binary ruling system, it has to have grey areas, and you have to have the space to be able to say, for example, this service is for people who might need breast cancer screenings. And if you haven't started medical transition, then you're not going to need them, and we're not breaking the law to say that. For example, that is an easy case. But often is implied this idea that there are some single-sex spaces which people genuinely need to ban all trans women from, and there just isn't. There is no justification to ever do that in any situation. If you want like a group for people who are currently pregnant, then it's just not going to include trans women. You don't need to do a ban of trans women because it's for people who are currently pregnant. So it's going to it's not going to include a load of cis women too. But if it's something like changing rooms and stuff, there's never a justification to blanket ban all trans women. There just isn't one. Because the whole reason that we have any of these services or facilities is always to address some kind of either physical, biological attribute, or to address some kind of sexism. And in any case, that is going to include at least some, probably most, or many trans women. So it's never going to be justified to blanket ban. Anyway, this article is still pretty decent from The Guardian, to be honest. I wish ministers would stop lying, saying it brings clarity, because it doesn't, said one MP. It just opens up a huge legal can of worms, and then the EHRC just put rocket boosters under the uncertainty. So this is the bit I want to talk about. There is particular disquiet at the role of the EHRC, which is drawing up formal guidelines. Its interim advice, released just 9 days after the Supreme Court decision, has faced significant criticism for, as some put it, oversimplifying the consequences of an often nuanced ruling. Most cited is about trans people being confronted. But it says, for now, the government says it is waiting for the EHRC, but there appears to be limited confidence in the organisation and its chair, Kishore Falconer, from some MPs and government officials. Come on, let's go. Critics, including some EHRC staff, argue the initial advice, which appears to have been drafted by a small team around Lady Falconer, showed a leadership team not equipped to handle such a weighty task. Mate, inject it into my veins! Yes, true. Finally someone's fucking saying it. My goodness, we have been saying this for years. I'm so pleased that people are starting to realise that, like, the EHRC is a corrupt mess run by a bunch of fucking idiots who are literally just there to hurt trans people, and they're causing problems with even their other colleagues. They are so bad. At an internal EHRC meeting last week, one staffer asked Falconer why the only additional legal counsel she had taken to help with the guidance was a barrister who previously acted for one of the women's groups, for one of the anti-trans hate groups that took the issue to the Supreme Court in the first place. Now, would you believe it? Falconer, insiders say, initially refused to answer what she called an ideologically based question. Yes, based on your stupid, hateful ideology, you ridiculous clown. The EHRC interim advice is the main cause of the problem so far. Another MP. So many MPs involved in this. seems to have been quite poorly led by a right-wing chair appointed by Liz Truss, who I don't think is particularly competent. Yes, mate, come on. Oh, goodness. A number of MPs, mainly Labour but also Lib Dem, are making their feelings known. A group of LGBT Labour MPs met Nia Griffith, the Junior Equalities Minister. But it does not stay up there. So there is interesting developments in this. We need to keep talking about this and pressing on this. Talk to your MPs about it. I do think it's important that the Baroness is replaced, but over incompetency. I think that's definitely one of the angles we need to push for. Anyway, more good news. MPs fear equality watchdog may take MPs fear UK equalities watchdog may take months to sign off on gender guidance. Exclusive. The EHRC insiders believe process could drag on until after its chair is replaced in November. Hooray. So they are getting rid of her. But it's going to take, I mean, of course this is going to take months. They're talking about trying to ban trans people from public. Like, they're going to have a whole fucking mess of stuff in place in order to not instantly lose in the European Court of Human Rights. So, I mean, it's not actually going to be possible for them to do that. They probably are going to attempt to remove some rights that we have. But it's not going to go... It's not going to be as bad, or hopefully won't be as bad as the interim guidance. And if it is, they will instantly face court problems. But there are a bunch of Labour MPs. I know Labour seems quite terrible at the moment because Keir Starmer and the people in charge are terrible, but there are a whole bunch of MPs in the party, and quite a lot of them are not happy about this at all. It is also worth pointing out in this article, like The Guardian... Maybe I'm being too optimistic, but I've seen other people saying it has maybe slightly changed their angle a little bit, because The Guardian has just been anti-trans for the last decade, and now they're saying things like, it was promised to complete the process by the end of July. A series of insiders have told The Guardian they believe this may not happen until after the watchdog's controversial chair is replaced. I don't think they would have said that a couple of years ago. Like, this article is... and the last article are fairly neutral, which is quite good for The Guardian. Some MPs are increasingly worried about what one said could be months of limbo for organisations and trans people. Concerns are in part due to worries about the ability of Lady Faulkner, who was appointed by Liz Truss, to be seen as a fair arbiter of how the public body should implement the court decision. So yeah, it's looking bad for Baroness Falconer, who seems, as we all know, to be incompetent and evil, and absolutely terrible at her job. But it's good that MPs are starting to see this. Write to your MP about it. Just send them these articles. But also, we just had this leak. So, Trans Advocacy and Complaints Collective, TACC, they... I don't know, do freedom of information requests. Anyway, it's a group. They probably have a bunch of stuff. I don't really know them that well, but they have posted about this. Can I make this a bit bigger? I can't get it all on one. Okay, sorry everyone. So they have done a Freedom of Information Act, or a set of requests, and they found that anti-trans activist Sex Matters secured a closed-door meeting with key figures at the Equality and Human Rights Commission, followed by a direct correspondence with the chair. What followed was not a policy discussion, it was a carefully coordinated lobbying campaign designed to reshape statutory guidance on single-sex services, roll back trans rights, and frame exclusion as legal clarity. Like, literally just a conspiracy theory happening in front of our eyes with evidence. So here they've documented the meetings. What is worth pointing out here is that the EHRC is meant to publish all of their meetings and minutes and stuff, and since Baroness Falcon has been in charge, they just haven't. And here they are doing sneaky backroom meetings with anti-trans hate groups and like just straight up talking about how they're going to misrepresent the law and like creating confusion about language and stuff. Anyway, you can see these letters and the responses. I will put them in the description. There's one other thing I wanted to point about here. I think it's in this one. Maybe it's in this other one. Ooh. Yeah. One government official had said that while there was an acceptance that the EHRC had made a mess out of the interim advice, the wider worry was that the watchdog had become so mired in the trans debate that it had lost sight of other equalities issues such as disability. In part, it's because the last government had one interest: prosecuting culture wars and sowing divisions rather than trying to answer the big questions, they said. And I do think, I do think that's worth constantly pointing out too, is yes, trans people are one of the main discussion points. Not one of the main actors in the discussion, but one of the main discussion points in the culture wars, in the attack on people's human rights. We are one of the vectors with which the right wing is trying to use to remove us from the European Court of Human Rights. And it's important to talk about this, and what they're doing is just fundamentally immoral. However, it is also worth pointing out that all of this bullshit is going to look bad for Labour when it comes to things like disability rights, which they are already making a big mess of and are already coming under a lot of fire for. So pointing out that someone like Baroness Falconer has contributed to that mess by doing absolutely nothing for anyone else at all, apart from just focusing solely on trans issues, it's worth doing. It's worth pointing out. So, I don't know. I think it is quite positive. I mean, for me, it feels like some level of vindication to finally see all of these MPs talking about how fucking terrible the EHRC is. It's depressing how slowly everything moves and how we're only starting to get momentum now. But it's good to see it happening, and we need to take this momentum and keep running with it and keep pushing on it, because this is the start still. And I know I keep saying that, but it is, and we will get there, but we can't give up now. It's making a difference. Us making a fuss is making a difference. I just saw someone saying, have we filled in the EHRC consultation? I haven't personally done it yet. I will be doing it for sure. I'm going to get Dr. Ruth Pierce on this channel, and we're going to do a stream together, which we did before for one of their other consultations, where we go through and fill it in together. And if you're someone who stresses about this kind of thing, then come and do it with us, because it will be more chill, less stressful. It will help you go through the answers and stuff. But if you don't like that kind of thing, Transactual have just put out guidelines for how to fill it in. You can check theirs out. There will be other guides coming. You don't need to do it today, but if you're the kind of person who likes to get things done, do it today. That's fine. Do it as soon as you want to. But we're going to do our stream maybe a couple of weeks before the deadline, so maybe in a couple of weeks, so that people have time to fill it in, but so the responses come later on in the process, so that Baroness Falconer and goons can't quickly rush out the thing, because they have to look at all of the stuff. And we just don't want it rushed. They already tried to rush it, just done in 2 weeks. Bearing in mind, for the Gender Recognition Act reforms, they had 3 whole multi-year long consultations when it was about improving trans rights, but now it's about removing trans rights. They're trying to rush it out, so we don't want them to rush it out. So yeah, make good trouble. That was what the Sugar the sugar the protester said the other day, and I think it's a good phrase. So hang in there, everyone. We're building momentum. Get on it. Let's do stuff. So I think that's everything we're going to cover this week. There was a couple of other things. I saw the gender critical started war on the Quakers, which was hilarious, and the UN has condemned the UK over trans rights, but we'll do those another time. Yeah, W to the mods. Thanks to all the mods in my channel. Thank you very much for volunteering your time and effort. I greatly appreciate you. Shout out to everyone in chat. Oh yeah, should we just see if there's any? I didn't see any super chats, but I'll just have a little look before I call it a day because it's a bit rude not to. Never feel obliged to super chat me, but if you do, I am very appreciative. Let's see what we got. We do indeed have some. Oh, we've got a Poppy here as well. Here she is. Right, let's read the super chats out, Pop. So we got one super. I can't. It doesn't tell me what date I got the money. It's just so annoying. It has a date, but it's like wrong. Oh, maybe. I mean, I don't even fucking know. I don't remember either. This one's out, so I'm gonna read them out. $10 US from Domestic saying for horrendous cat conditions, tech issues. Not quite sure what that's about. Look at this. She's not got horrendous conditions. Moif Velocita says, with love from Denmark, thank you for remembering intersex people, Katie, and for everything you do. It means a lot. It's important to point out that gender criticals and transphobes harm intersex people too, because we can all be allies in this. No, it's all good. Independent thinking, £5. What are actually gonna do? I've got side hustle, casting in the direction of better future. It's hard arguing with scum. I'm not quite sure what you mean there. Maybe you're asking what I'm gonna do other than this. I don't know. Play Pokemon cards. And then £5 from Paula says, I've always said we're going to be canaries in this particular coal mine. Yeah, so there's several canaries and we are one. On the train into fascism. Anyway, very fun. Thank you everyone for hanging around. And I appreciate you all. Back at the same time next week, 8 p.m. UK time. Hang in there, write to your MP, cuddle your cat, and oh Poppy. And I'll see you all next week.